headphones too.
Yeah.
Okay. That's
So you- So Elaine Navarro with Just Look Left, grant writing.
Yes.
Tell me about the name, because I think you have an explanation for it, but tell everybody else kind of how you came up with it.
You got it. Yeah, it's on my website, which I had to eventually put on because I get this question all the time. A lot of folks think it's political. It is not. So
I didn't even go there.
Yeah, I know. Some people do.
My brain doesn't work that way.
Not at all. Mine doesn't either. My mom and I, back in, I think, 2017, were on this epic mother-daughter adventure in Europe. And so at the time, we were in London. And we'd look through all the guidebooks, all the things like, okay, what are we doing next? Here's the plan. And like, finally we were like, there's just so much. We were overwhelmed. Let's just walk. Let's just see what happens and see what we find. And it always ended up being that we looked down these funny little alleys and it would always be to the left and be like, oh, let's go down there. Let's pop down there. And that whole trip, like our tagline was like, I don't know, let's figure it out. Let's just look left, and to see where it takes us. And so I got the URL with the intention of like starting a food tour or something fun here in downtown Salem, because there was just starting to be all the restaurants in Electric Alley and like something like that. Obviously never did that, but sat on the URL. And then when it came time to launch my consultancy, I was like, you know what, that actually still rings true. A, it makes me think about my mom. And B, it's like, that's how I really approach grant writing, is like, I remain curious. It's like, I don't kind of stay on that same path that everybody else does. It's like, let's leave no rock unturned. Let's just see what's out there. And you never know what sort of conversation is going to lead you to the next potential grant opportunity. So I'm always just looking left.
That's
awesome.
Awesome.
It's kind of fun.
And it's interesting because people are my initial thought with grant writing is like, okay, this is someone who is very, it's almost like someone who's good at forms and like government forms. They know which form to fill out and
they know which box to check.
Yeah,
there's some of that.
But there's a lot more human element to grant writing because you're dealing with someone else on the opposite end.
Correct.
Who's representing that grant, and they want to be convinced why you representing your person is the best fit for that.
Yes.
So there's a lot more than just filling out the.
You're their advocate.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
I always say that grant writing is about this much of what I actually do. So, as a grant consultant, it's a full circle, full service firm that we do. So when we have a new client come to see us, they're like, hey, I need money. And I'm like, yeah, absolutely. Let's do this. So we get to understand them and their programming and who they're wanting to serve. And, the first thing we do is we build them out a 12 to 18 month grant calendar funding strategy. Like, this is the roadmap. This is what we're sticking to. These are the most highly aligned grant opportunities that you're going to have the best odds of winning, because we know the funders. Oregon is kind of our territory. We serve a couple nonprofits outside of that, but it's like, this is where our relationships are. Yeah. We know the probability of these grants being awarded. We know what that funder is looking for. So we build out that grant calendar. Then we help the client and walk alongside them to like actually have meetings with these funders before we even put pen to paper.
There's like meetings that happen?
I didn't
even know that.
It's a total people game.
Okay.
Absolutely. And it's a relationship building. And like, I lean on my own relationships to then help leverage those so that my clients can build those relationships with those funders and that sort of thing. So we have meetings, whether it's in person or Zoom or a phone call. And then if we get a good vibe off that and we're like, they really seem to like this part of what this nonprofit's doing, let's really hype that up in our application. Then we write the application, we hopefully get awarded, we track it, we report on it, and then we're stewarding that funder the entire time so that they're excited about what's going on. They see that we've used their funding the way that we intended, and that maybe we even did better than what we thought, and then we can come back that next cycle and ask for more.
So it doesn't just end once they get the grant, like you then have to like report back to them and be like, I want you to feel good about the money that you just...
Totally.
Okay.
Totally. Okay. Yeah, and folks think, we got the money, like, we're done, right? And it's like, no. There's this whole other grant management side of it that our firm does as well, that is not as glamorous, but it needs to be done. It needs to be done. Yeah, and we absolutely offer that too.
Walk us through like a typical. I'm sure there's not really a typical one that you deal with, but what isn't like one that comes up a lot as far as like, I need money for this, and then who would be the match for that you would pull in and kind of pair them together?
It depends. Nowadays, most nonprofits just want general operating funding, just to be flexible, whether they need it for new staffing, whether they're launching a program, whether they need it to pay their rent, like general capital. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. General operating funding is gold. And a lot of funders are moving towards that, which is great to see. So Oregon Community Foundation has some great programs. Marie Landrum has some great programs. Ford Family Foundation specializes in the rural space. They're very good as well. All excellent partners and like people I can pick up the phone and talk to a real human being. And like I think that's very important in this philanthropic space, because some funders, and I won't say any publicly, is like you'll send in an application and you'll hear nothing. It goes into the void. There's nobody to talk to. And it's like, why did we just waste all of our time? So now that I know, and I have a running list of those, we don't approach those anymore.
Really?
Like we just don't. It's, my goal in life is to really help even the playing field with, we have funders that have money. We have nonprofits that need money. Like, let's bring it down and have, a very trust-built relationship. So this not like we have the money up here, you're groveling down here, show us what you can do kind of a thing. Like it's not, that shouldn't be the way that it is.
Yeah. I think that's how most people think that it goes too.
And there is still a lot of that out there. If you have, a long-standing family foundation that is really interested in certain things, you'll look at their funding history and they're always funding the same organizations. Mm-hmm. They never extend, an invitation to others outside of that key realm, and that's fine. That's their money. They can choose to do what they want, but is it the right thing to do?
Yeah.
I don't really think so, but that's just me. So I'm kind of like Robin Hood, and stealing from the rich, giving to the poor. But it's been interesting because when you see, there's so many foundations out there and you think, well, there's just money all over the place. And yes, there is, but every single approach is so different. Yeah. And it really is. Who can you get to know? Who can you have as an ally? And the funding, sector, it's small, so they talk to each other. So it's like if you're not the right fit for this particular opportunity, they know somebody else who you are, and they'll make a nice warm introduction, and then we start to have that conversation over there.
Do you ever have a client that's like, I want you to go after this, and you're like, that's not going to be a good fit for you? How does that conversation go?
I really pride myself, like I'm not a sugarcoater. Like I've been around long enough to know I can do that for you. I advise highly against it. Yeah. And at the end of the day, like if they're on a monthly retainer and that's where they want their funding to go towards, that they're paying my firm to do, like I would do it. Yeah. But it's not.
It's not going to serve you.
It isn't. Yeah. It isn't. So I try my best, and they say, there could be a particular reason, or maybe they had a conversation and they think it's a good idea, and I'll do it. Yeah. But it's not what I think serves the client or serves me or serves the funder. So
do you feel it works better when they come to you just as kind of a clean slate to say, this is what we need, we're open to any avenue that we need to go?
Totally.
Like, run with it. Okay.
That is helpful. And I have those conversations with folks, and a lot of times they will come around and be like, oh, I didn't realize that was how that funder actually operates, and they'll say, maybe let's not approach that opportunity. What else is out there, kind of a thing. So that's why I'm really a stickler for building out that roadmap for clients ahead of time, because they may come and say, we have a few ideas here and there, and it's like, but again, we don't want to be reactive. Like we want to be proactive, and there's a way to stack funding, depending upon timelines and depending upon their needs, that makes the most sense strategically. So that's really kind of my bread and butter and what I stand for.
Is there any funder that will not give money if they find somebody else did? Like, is there any sort of like competition in that realm?
Not with the ones that I approach.
Okay.
No, there's some.
I always wonder that, like, if somebody's like, I would have given you money, but you got it from Bob over here. So, like,
it really is genuinely a very collegial space. Okay. At least the type of funders that I reach out to. I think they're in Oregon. We're just a lot newer than like a lot longer. Yeah. That there might be some of that. I have not encountered much of it over here, which is really, really good.
Yeah. So because of this is like general, most of it is going to be like general funding. They need, this is going to be like a yearly thing they're going to be having to seek and kind of recharge, as opposed to like, I just need money for this one project we're going to build out.
Yes. And there are funders that love that. Like they want you to come at them with a specific project or a program, and that's what they want to do. Some are a lot more open and flexible, which are the ones that we typically approach. But if it makes sense and a client has a really cool idea that they want to pilot, and I know about a foundation that really likes that type of work, we'll absolutely go for that opportunity. But more and more nowadays, I'm seeing funders do multi-year. So you can get general operating for 3 years to kind of build out a runway, because at the end of the day, foundations aren't going to fund you into perpetuity forever. Like we have to
Yeah.
become self-sustainable, whether that's through individual donations or hosting fundraising events or seeking other funding partners. But yeah, that gets hard because, some of my clients, all of their services are for free because that's
Yeah.
the type of clientele that they're serving, and it has to be that way. So how can they, without that earned revenue,
Yeah.
how can they diversify their funding to not always be so reliant on certain foundations?
Gotcha. And
Yeah.
it's, I mean, part of it, like you're going back to, is the relationship building
Mm-hmm.
of it. If they really, really like that, what the cause is,
Exactly.
they could, fund in perpetuity for however long
Totally.
they need it. But,
Totally.
Yeah. So I can see why you don't want to burn any bridges.
No way. No way. That's the
She's
last
like,
thing.
we love everyone.
Yes. Yes.
So how'd you get into this?
It was in 2009, and I was working for the city of Beaverton, so just outside of Portland. I was going to the Art Institute of Portland, and I was an intern for the city's Arts Commission. So it was kind of a funky department that was partially funded by the city, partially funded by a foundation. So it had an executive director there, Janie, who's like one of my very first mentors, an amazing woman. She took me under her wing as her first intern, and I was like, oh, yay, this will be fun. And she's like, I need you to write this grant. I hear you like writing. And I said, I love writing. It has always been something. Like math, no way, no how. But I've had to do a lot of math, with budgets and things for grants. So I've gotten over that. But she just plopped a grant on my desk and said, can you write this? And I said, sure, sounds fun. I don't know what this is, but let's do it. And so it was a small baby one through the Oregon Arts Commission, and we ended up getting it. And she's like, great, this is your job now. And I'm like, oh,
do more.
fun. Oh, fun.
Oh, interesting.
So we did a lot of arts workshops and events and public art and murals. And so all really cool, fun stuff to write about. Her and I worked together for about 4 more years, and I was writing grants pretty often. She ended up retiring, and I kind of took over that role. And I approached the finance director one day at the city, Patrick, and I said, hey, Patrick, of course, in the arts is typically the last thing funded and the first thing that falls off the radar. I said, but I'm writing grants like 50% of my time. I'm not able to serve these local artists and do all the things that my job actually entails.
Yeah.
Like, why is the arts the only thing not funded here? And he's like, oh, it's not? We'll just put you in the budget next year. And I'm like, oh, like nobody asked. And so we became fully funded by the city. I didn't have to write grants anymore.
No way.
And I missed it. I secretly missed it. And I'm like, oh, dang it. So, fast forward, I was working at Salem Hospital and COVID happened, and I was an executive assistant, and I'm at home being an executive assistant. I had a lot of free time.
Yeah.
And Adam was like, well, why don't you start writing grants again? You're unfulfilled. This is not your life's purpose. Like, why don't you were always so good at that? And I'm like, start a business? Who does that?
Yeah.
And he's like,
In COVID
people,
time.
people do it literally all the time. So it's his fault that all of this happened, which I'm so thankful. So I took a course about how to launch a grant consultancy through Shemeketa and dabbled with a website and a business license. And then I launched it on my mom's birthday, July 16th, 2020. And I was not ready, but Adam put it out on his Facebook and said, Elaine's open for business. She's writing grants again. I'm like, gosh, darn it. And
That
so,
dang husband
yes,
of yours.
I know. He's the visionary. I'm the granular, like, okay, that sounds really fun, but how's that happening? And just with our connections and our being in this community for so long, people came out of the woodwork that we'd known in other ways, shapes, and forms, didn't know that I had this talent. And we're like, oh, I have a nonprofit, or I need a grant writer. And it just grew from there. I stayed on with the hospital for another year or so, and I had my last baby. And on maternity leave, I just knew that I wasn't going to go back. And I was like, it's now or never. Like, we're building the runway, and I just need to replace my
Can't make that
hospital
jump.
salary. That's all I need to do. And since then, it's just grown, and we're a team of 4, and they're amazing women. And I love going to work every day.
That's awesome.
It's just, I just never thought in a million years that this would become a thing. So it was hard for my parents at first because my dad was a career firefighter. My mom was a career teacher. So like that was what they did. And it was excellent. They have an amazing retirement now, but then to learn my daughter is an entrepreneur, what's going to happen to her? What about her retirement? What about her PERS? What about her? And they're good with it now.
They're good with it.
They're good with
It
it
is
now.
well with their soul.
Yes.
So
yes.
It's sometimes hard to get family to wrap their brain around your vision sometimes.
Totally. No, it's been really fun.
Yeah. So grant writing. So do you work mostly with nonprofits? Is there any other type of grants out there for like small businesses or anything that you work with? Or is it mostly if a business wants to start a nonprofit aspect to their business?
95% of the grants out there are for nonprofits. I mean, so you'll occasionally see some through like Business Oregon. There was a ton of funding during COVID, which I loved for small businesses, but that has kind of not happening
It dries
anymore.
up quick,
It has
I'm
dried
sure.
up. It has dried up.
Yeah.
There are ways around that. There's some federal funding. SBIR grants are for small businesses, but they're scary, a little bit scary in terms of like their application process, and like you really have to have your ducks in a row. Not to say it's not a good idea, but those are some that are out there. There's always, depending upon what the project is that you want funded, you can always be fiscally sponsored by a nonprofit, even if you are a for-profit entity. So say like you guys wanted to start like an internship program and work with the local community college, like they could fiscally sponsor you as that project, even though you're not a nonprofit, because it has some sort of charitable or educational purpose. Like it's a nonprofit project, even if you're not a nonprofit, if that makes sense. So there's some ways around it like that. But yeah, I will occasionally see small ones for small businesses, but not a ton. And I wish it wasn't that way. Yeah.
So I think for a business, then it's like, how can I bring on a nonprofit aspect to my business to complement it,
Right.
where I can go out and do this thing in the community,
Absolutely.
which would in turn bring some notice to my business, but I'm also doing something for the community
Exactly.
in some way.
Exactly, which is kind of how we structured, the boxing gym. Of course, it started out very much as a for-profit business, and then, as Toe to Toe grew and more folks were interested in it, it was like we were having to scholarship folks, out of our pocket, and we really want to do a lot more with individuals with disabilities and that sort of thing. And it's like that's where the nonprofit side comes in. So I can get a couple grants, and we funnel it through that side, and we're able to scholarship more individuals and do specific programming for folks that otherwise would not have access. So there is always that element when it makes sense. When you are able to have that for-profit, nonprofit side.
Okay.
Yeah. I know. I wish there was more.
Yeah, no.
And if I ever stumble upon, I'll of course share those, but I just don't see them nearly as often as I used to.
So what kind of nonprofits are around here that we should know about?
Gosh, there's so many great ones. I work a lot in the social services. So Salem Angels is an amazing client of mine that we've worked together for a long time. Latino Business Alliance is my very first client, and they're just fabulous. And they're lovely, and I have so enjoyed working with them. I've got quite a few up in Portland. I think the team and I'm a big wine gal. So we have a nonprofit here called iVoy, and so they are supporting wine stewards across the Willamette Valley with 17 weeks of education, because the folks that are tending the vines in the wine industry typically don't get to see where that finished bottle goes towards, and they don't know. If they don't have a command of the English language, it's very difficult for any sort of upward mobility to happen. They're typically the sole providers of their families. So they, in partnership with Chemeketa and Linfield, take these individuals through this amazing training program, and then their winery or vineyard employer then agrees after that's completed to either a raise or an elevation in their duties, and that so it like helps to really build that pipeline to show them that it's so cool.
I think we have Para coming on. He's part of that.
Yes,
so.
he is.
Yeah.
Yes, no, Sam's awesome. So yeah, there's just some fun ones. There's just folks doing such amazing things, and if I wasn't in this space, I never would have known that any of it's happening. We have an equine therapy center out in Klamath Falls. It's one of my longtime clients. I didn't know anything about equine therapy. I was like, horses are cool. Like, yes. But now it's like, no, I could talk to you for hours about equine therapy and the benefits of it, and the amazing people that are being served by that type of work.
I'm sure a facility like that, it's money hungry as far as, keep it running.
So expensive.
Yeah.
So expensive. So that's like the type of client, like they just need general operating because, it costs money to feed the horses and to maintain the pastures and the stables and the equipment. And it's wild.
Is there any like nonprofits that really struggle to find that funding? Is it a certain type, or is it just kind of how they approach it?
More and more funders are very interested in seeing that the nonprofit itself is very reflective of the community that's being served. So if you're a nonprofit and you're made up of individuals that have no lived experience, say we'll just use the foster care space, for example. And so the board, the staff, and everybody, nobody has any lived experience either being in foster care or serving individuals in foster care, that sort of thing. And yet they're trying to support foster care individuals. There's a disconnect there. And so funders see that. That's why it's so amazing with, folks like Salem Angels. There is so much lived experience on their board and on their staff as folks that have worked at DHS and worked and walked alongside these kids in those horrible situations and really been able to uplift them and get them the support that they need. So that's the main difficulty with folks, and it can be hard in rural areas because a foundation is going to want to see that you have a good amount of diversity on your board, and diversity can look a lot of different ways. Some funders are very focused on race and ethnicity, and that's fine, and that's one piece of it. But a lot of rural, serving organizations in their teeny tiny town, there may not be a ton of racial and ethnic diversity. So what other diversity can we bring in? Is it veteran status? Is it, lived experience in homelessness? Like what other ways can we be sure to bolster our staff and our board to make sure that it's representing the community?
That's one thing you probably have to look at as you approach for a grant too.
Yes.
Is like, well, what are they going to look for? And then how can we leverage that?
For sure. It's a lot of creative thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Thinking outside of the box. Looking left.
Exactly. That's right. That's right. Yeah.
So, so with the grant writing part of it, how much, where do you pull your people in from? I mean, you kind of like fell into it. How do you find people that you think would be the best person to represent you and represent your company as being part of a grant writing company?
Yeah. And it's funny because a couple years ago, when I was doing this as a one-woman show before I started building my team, like it gets lonely. Yes, Adam and I work from home together, but like I can't talk to him about the kind of things and struggles that I have in my type of work the way that he can. So I really needed a community around me. So I joined this amazing program called Learn Grant Writing, and they have just changed my life and the trajectory of my business and really gave me the tools I needed to like, oh, you're at a point that you physically can't do anything more. You have to start growing your team or you have to start saying no. I don't like to say no. So I'm like, okay, I guess we're going to grow the team.
Yeah.
And I never wanted to be a boss. I never wanted to be responsible for anybody's like finances and like well-being. Like, what if this whole thing blows up tomorrow? Like, then it's on me. So that they are an amazing group because there's, I think, 600 grant writers in that community. So like if there's ever a specialized project, I pull from there in terms of I need a subcontractor who knows a heck of a lot about workforce development in this particular federal program. I know exactly where to go. Because we're Oregon based, it's important to me that my team is also Oregon based. So I have two lead grant writers and client leads, so Sarah and Mariah. Sarah was my very first hire. She was born the day before me. Like literally we've grown up together. Her dad was a firefighter. Like all this, our lives have intertwined in so many ways. And she was a dancer up in Portland and writing grants for her own creative projects. And so I saw that potential in her, and she was really burnt out with the dance studio that she was working at. And about the same time, I was like, I have no more time. I am burning the candle at both ends. I need help. And I was like, I'm going to reach out to Sarah. And so I reached out to Sarah, and she's like, I was just going to text you because I hate my job and I want to come write grants for you. And I was like, okay,
it's perfect timing.
Here we go. And she's just been amazing. And I don't need people on my team that know how to write grants ahead of time. I can teach that to anybody. It's that personality because my grant writers are also, they're doing a lot of the client communication. Yeah. And I want them to represent me, and the way that I approach things. And I try to be so intentional, and I try to be very empathetic, and just and they can probably do things better than I can. Certainly, once I saw, my way is not necessarily always the best way, and how can they kind of put their own spin on it? So it really is a personality fit. And it has to be, they have to be thinking 3 steps ahead. Like I can't continuously be feeding information and okay, this is now what you do. It's like, they're like, well, we saw you do this, so we assume that's what we do. And I'm like, yes, absolutely. Yeah. You took initiative. Like, I'm so proud of you. That's awesome. And so Sarah's there. And then Mariah is my other lead grant writer. We used to work on the funding side of it. So she understands kind of the other side of, what funders are looking for. So I saw her potential early on and I stole her away. She's fabulous. And then Rachel is my behind the scenes right-hand gal, operations in my inbox, in my calendar, keeping up the website, all of our marketing materials, just anything. She is just a dynamo. And it has all serendipitously happened. And I can't say, I like to keep a small team, but it may grow. But it really has to be that personality fit and that willingness and that potential to just learn and grow. And we're really just growth mindset around here.
Is obtaining grants, is this kind of like advertising, or like a company like towards the end of the year is like, we have our advertising budget for the next year that we open up, so we'll start looking at new advertising opportunities. Is it the same with grants, or is it grants kind of like a 360 type thing? They're just available all year long?
Each funder is different. So some of them have specific like funding cycles throughout the year. So Oregon Community Foundation, for example, this last year had one in January and one in July. And so those are the deadlines and they're fixed. And so other funders, Ford Family Foundation, they're rolling. You can apply at any time. But it, knowing the moment you apply to when you'll get an award or a decline is, about 3 months, which is a really short timeline. Most of the time they're 6 to 9 months. So it's all different. And that's how we really piece out those grant calendars that we make when we know about those hard and fast deadlines. Yes, those are fixed, but those other ones that are rolling are a little bit more flexible. That's when we see, we have a month in this calendar. There's no deadlines. Like, let's throw one of those rolling ones in there so that we can kind of just continue to populate the pipeline all year long.
Wow.
Yeah.
So is it like a hurry up and wait type situation where it's like, it's a very slow process, or it depending on who you're talking to, you could get answers within weeks or months, or how does that work?
There's a few that are faster, but the majority of it really is. It really is. Grants are a long game, and they're, I always encourage clients, you cannot rely on them. You can't rely on grants. Like, I can write the most perfect grant proposal. There's nothing wrong with it, but the funder that day decided, I didn't really like equine therapy. I'm not going to fund this. And we may never know. Like, a lot of funders will tell you on the back end, like, hey, the board didn't like this application because of X, Y, and Z. And we're like, okay, good to know. But some of the processes are not nearly as transparent. And sometimes they'll just say, we got too many applications. And it's like, yeah, but why wasn't ours among those that we picked? Like, there has to be something. There has to be something. Yeah. So that's always frustrating. But I get everyone's understaffed. Most of these foundations may have one paid staff person and a board, and they're trying to get through all these applications. I get it. So it is a long game, and it definitely is not a quick turnaround. So when I have clients or prospective clients that come to me and they're already in a bind, that makes it really difficult, because it's like, well, we should have been talking 6-9 months ago. If we knew that this was you're now in the red, and it's now an emergency situation.
So with some of these boards, do they have a person that's like your exact opposite, where it's like you're trying to get the grants and they're trying to screen you as far as, is there?
I haven't encountered much of that. Yeah.
Brian's like, is there? I want to know all of that.
The evil twin, it's like they're trying to block you.
Kind of like an insurance, like you have a claim, but I need to see why this isn't going to work.
Yeah.
I haven't encountered much of that yet, at least that I'm aware of.
Well, you've got an alternate job. If this doesn't work out, you can go work for them. And it's like, I'm going to screen them out because I know all the ins and outs.
Right.
Yeah.
I know
I would be a horrible grant approver, because I'd just be like, everybody gets the money. Like, I could never say no.
It's so hard.
I'd be like, we have
so
to
many
sell the house because
houses.
these people need money.
Yep.
Yeah.
I know. And so I get it. And that's why it's so, I try to and give grace when obviously we do get a decline. And I'm like, I'm sure that was just as hard of a decision for them as it was for me to hear that news. And now I have to convey it to the client, and they're going to be upset. And it's like,
that would be tough.
It's gotten easier. I still don't like it. I still don't like it.
Is it like good years and bad years with some of these organizations?
It is. It really is. And it's hard to describe, because some foundations, unlike the ones that will fund general operating in multi-year, like some require you to take a year off. And it's like, okay, well, we know it's a gap year with this particular funder. Like, who are we going to try and find to fill that?
They require you to take a year off?
Mm-hmm. Some are like in every other year, which makes it really difficult. Some are like, okay, if you've gotten a grant from us 3 years in a row, like, give someone else a turn. And I'm like, but you still need it.
We're gonna rename our business then.
Exactly. So it's just, and they're all so different. So knowing those ins and outs, that helps me then, say, okay, well, we've got our grant calendar for this year. It's not going to look anything like next year, because I know that these 4 we're not going to be eligible for. You know what I mean? So it's, and if
I picture like a big board, and you're like moving these pieces over there.
Truly. Yeah, absolutely.
So you probably do have some sort of map of like, here's everyone we've ever dealt with as far as. And so you kind of know, have you ever dealt with anybody new? I mean, are there new ones coming on?
New foundations?
Yeah, new foundations.
There are. Or there's some that, maybe started out really small and perhaps had a benefactor that, bequested a large amount of funding. And now all of a sudden people know about them because they're giving away a lot more funding. Okay. So there are new ones that come into the fold, or there's ones that, maybe they originally liked this certain type of project and now they've changed and they like this other thing over here. So it's like, it's always moving. It's never stagnant. And so keeping on top and apprised of those types of things is important in my work. We've had a couple really large foundations for the past year that have all gone through strategic planning. So they all took a year off, and it was like, that's good. I'm glad you're doing that. But like, until then, like, everyone's in the lurch because those were big funders, and now they're kind of back on the radar, and it's like, all right, let's see what happens. But since there was that delay, now there's even more need, so it's even more competitive. So
is there like a master list of funders, or how do you find these people?
There is, what is it called? I don't know if it's the Oregon Data Book or something. You can they have a paid version online, or you can get it at your local library, but then we keep one internally, just kind of our unicorn list of like, these are the funders we love and that we'll approach every single time, and they know us by name, and they're probably annoyed by us, but like, they're amazing
like,
to
"We're
work with.
back!"
Exactly. And these are the ones that I will never, ever, ever, ever.
Your blacklist.
Yep.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yep.
So do you ever, because we have a daughter that's going into college next year. And so I was like, so for grants, does that apply to like student type grants too? Or is it strictly for businesses and nonprofits, or?
It is mainly for organizations. So a lot of the funders I
Dang
work
it.
with, I know they won't fund individuals, unfortunately. But I mean, there is scholarships and things like that, of course. But grants are specifically organization to organization.
Got it.
Yeah,
Okay.
not to
I didn't
say
know
that
that.
the end user of, if a nonprofit gets grant money, the end user of that grant money can be individuals, but they are the holder of that. So, a lot of nonprofits will start their own scholarship foundation, or like a student, maybe they'll have something with students, and there's a potential for like small grants to students. So there's things.
Like Ford Family. They do that.
They do.
Okay.
They do. Absolutely.
Okay.
They have a fabulous sponsorship
I have always,
program.
to me, like, grants and scholarships, they've always been synonymous in my brain.
Very similar.
And so, I don't think about grants being like designated for businesses. I think of it just like it's give money away, not give money away, but you know what I mean.
It's just different who is it going to another entity, or is it going to an individual? That's really the only difference.
How does someone who wants to get into giving money away, what do you call them then? Is it
like a funder? To be a
type?
funder, yeah.
How does someone
Benefactor.
benefit? Yeah, thank you. I couldn't brain that word. Sorry.
It's okay.
So how does somebody get into that, or do you know much about that side as
Like
far
if
as,
folks have a wad of cash they want to get rid of.
if they're all of a sudden like,
Do you have a lot of cash?
I do not have
Okay,
a lot of cash,
okay.
but
I
if
just
we
wanna make
ever
sure we're on
win
the
the
same page.
lottery, I have like a number. If we hit this
love
certain
that.
number,
Yeah.
I want to start,
Of course.
giving money away. So buy a lotto ticket.
If she starts calling us, we must be doing something really good.
There we go.
That's right.
There
That's
we
right.
go.
I love it.
Does someone want to give Hustle Northwest some money, and
there
we
you go.
can then?
Yes. I love. See.
Yeah. See, if anybody's out there,
Right.
Just saying.
One of the easiest ways, I'll say again, the Oregon Community Foundation, they have like their grant making side, but then they also hold all of these donor advised funds.
Okay.
So those are internal, like small family foundations or a couple or an individual that says, I have this amount of money. I want it to be housed at the Oregon Community Foundation, and I want it to support education and this and that. And so the cool thing about the Oregon Community Foundation is that you have the grant stuff, but then all these internal folks, once they have access to your grant applications, and they can decide like, ooh, I really like that. I really want to throw some money that way. And then you get these magic checks in the mail. Like there's typically no reporting requirements. They just say, hey, this came from the so-and-so family foundation housed at the Oregon Community Foundation. They would like you to use it for general operating for your equine therapy center. Here you go. And then typically once that happens, they happen every year. Not always, but that's a really great way. And I think the fees are super low, and they manage everything for you. They have amazing program officers that kind of like walk you through and say, hey, well, let's take you on a site visit for this amazing organization. You said you liked X, Y, and Z. They do X, Y, and Z. Let's try and make that connection. And then you can decide how much of your funding you want to go towards that. And it remains in there, and it like, there's only a certain level that they let you give because they make sure that it continues to grow, like as an endowment, essentially. So that's a pretty cool thing that I don't see super often, but that's another whole arm of the Oregon Community Foundation.
What's like the most common grant amount that you see for something like that?
I'm trying to think.
Like,
It
thinking, is it as
ranges.
little as like $1,000 or
It
like
can be.
$50,000?
That's honestly about the range that I see from those kind of like, hey, here you go. This is your our end of year contribution to your organization. Use
Like,
it for
go do
however
some
you'd like.
good.
Yeah, exactly. So those
Pocket
are really
change
nice.
for them.
Yeah.
But like
You
big deal for us. Yeah.
Like, seriously
Right.
though, I mean, that's like,
Yeah.
especially as business owners and stuff like that, and being involved in the community. I mean, I think that's kind of end game goals, like
Yeah.
that you get to the point where you can start going and like helping
Yeah.
other people. What's happening with our light up there?
I don't know. It's freaking out.
Austin's like, quit paying attention up there. So, but I mean, I think that's something that's like, it would be incredible to be able to get to the position where you are now going out and
Yeah.
helping other people along the way. So,
Absolutely. That's the
Yeah.
dream right there. For
pulling
sure.
at the heartstrings.
Oh, yeah.
So,
So
yeah.
I mean, I'm sure everybody loves just getting a check cut to them.
Yes.
But how do you stay in good standing with how do you use it? How do you track the use of it and
oh, that's a
report
good
back to them?
question.
Depends what the grant is for. So if it's for general operating, there's usually a final report. It depends how long the period of support is. Usually it's a year. So like you get the check in April, you'll owe a final report in April to say, what did you do with the money? They're not asking for like a nickel and diming, like show me your bank statements, nothing like that. How many people did it support, any success stories, that sort of thing. So those are easier. When it's a program or project specific that the money needs to go towards, we have a conversation with the client to say like, hey, remember, you have $20,000, you need to spend it on this particular program. And they say, okay. And then we have our quarterly check-ins to be like, how's it going? Are you able to kind of meet all of those outcomes that we set in the grant application, or are we above it? Are we doing even better? Or are we having a bit of an issue and we need to try and get those numbers up? So we really keep tabs with clients along the way just to make sure that when that final report happens, we're able to show.
You're good stewards of the money.
Exactly.
So what happens if, I mean, not to like shed a spotlight on something negative, but what happens if that doesn't happen?
Usually the funder, and the funders that we typically approach are pretty understanding. It's like, hey, we thought, maybe this was a new program. We thought we were going to be able to reach 25 kids.
Yeah.
We only reached 15, and it's because of this. But of those 15, we were able to, serve them at an even deeper capacity rather than, maybe they got one equine therapy session, they got 5. That's cool too.
So there's like a human element to it.
There so
Okay.
is. There so is. Yeah, they're usually very understanding.
Are people expected to use up all of the grant money as quickly as possible, and or they come in at budget? I mean, I
like how some of these questions she's like,
for government work, if a government agency got this is our budget, they're going to meet that budget every time and probably want to go over it because they don't want to get their funding cut.
it's like a use it or
Right.
lose it sort of thing.
Right.
So I'm guessing if they say how'd you do with the amount we gave you, I'm gonna say we spent every single dime
Yes.
of it and went so great.
Yes.
We needed 5,000
but we need more.
Yeah.
Exactly.
No, actually we have 5,000 left. Here you go. We're gonna
Right.
give that back.
We never give it back. No,
We never give it back.
very rare that I'll have a client that is like, I just wasn't able to use it. And I'm like, well, okay, well, let's think about why
So then you can
was
come
that?
in and give them maybe different perspectives on how that money could be utilized to benefit their business even further.
Exactly.
Okay.
Or
That's
it's, we
amazing.
can, if we're in that situation, sometimes the grant funder will give an extension. Like we need 6 more months, especially with like a capital project. If we're renovating a building or building a building, those timelines can be all sort of wackadoo. So maybe we weren't, maybe there was a delay in construction or this or that. And so we do need 6 more months to be able to
So
utilize
that goes
the
back to
funding.
that relationship.
Yep.
part. Okay.
Exactly.
That's amazing.
Exactly.
It's cool.
Yeah.
So what does growth look like for you?
Oh, I love that question.
Oh,
Yeah.
I just, the team is really solid right now. And I don't think we could take on too many more clients right now and still remain, sane.
Yeah.
Because it's really important to me that my girls aren't burnt out and they're enjoying the work that they're doing and they're getting to write about a bunch of different things that they're passionate about too. I don't know. I do mainly private foundation grants. We do a little bit of state and federal grants, and those are kind of a whole nother ball game. But there's bigger money available for those types of things. So I would like to dive a little bit deeper into federal grants.
I thought it was really neat. Well, sorry to interrupt, but
No.
we noticed a lot of small towns were able to get grant money to revitalize their downtown area.
Yeah.
Yes.
Staten's doing that right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah,
We're
those
seeing
Main
a
Street
huge,
grants.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Main Street. Yeah, that's what they're called.
Those are fun.
Yeah. So I mean, because it not only benefits the city and the people, but the business that it's located in is also
Absolutely.
getting a benefit out of it too.
Well, I worked for a small city for about 10 years, and it was neat like when we would get grants for like parks that we could go out and do these sort of I mean, it was really neat to see that there was, and sometimes it was our public works director was doing a really good job writing these grants and trying to go out and get them, and all of a sudden he'd be like, we got it, and we're going to get all of this, new equipment for the city, or I think there was like infrastructure grants that we got too. He did a really good job with it.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And so, but it was neat to see how going out there and getting those grants and how it can be put into play for the community as a whole. It's
Absolutely.
it was just neat to see.
It is.
That's kind of where you started at too.
It's true.
Yeah.
I know. Beaverton and
Maybe
Beaverton has
you
grown
make it
so
full
much.
circle eventually, and you're going to get back into that.
There we go. I just might. But there's so many cool programs out there, and it's like I've never been one to necessarily niche myself. Aside from saying Oregon is kind of our territory. That's really the folks that we deal with. But like within that, I can't say like we are the go-to for this specific industry, but because like foster care is so fascinating to me, and social services and rural serving and BIPOC-led BIPOC serving, like all these different things. I'm like, I love all of this. So like, a lot of business coaches will say, well, you have to niche down to be able to like successfully scale. And like, I see that, but like, I don't know what
You're
that
like,
looks
do
like
I?
quite yet.
Do I really?
I know. Cause it's like, I don't want it to be pigeonholed, and I want to remain open to new opportunities. So I don't know that the team will grow necessarily in the next year. Maybe they need to tell me, when they're like, this is way more work than I want, Elaine, then I'll, figure that out. But, I think we'll kind of explore some other funding buckets that maybe we aren't our frequent flyers, and kind of maybe become experts in some of those larger federal programs to then be able to like be an expert in that, and then find the client specifically like, you would be perfect for this. Like, we need to get you this money, and they'd be like, yeah, let's do it. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I guess
It
if
could
you had
go
a
lot of different
broad
ways.
palette of things that you do, if you had an up year or down year, it may affect
Right.
one industry, but maybe it doesn't affect the other.
It's true. It's kind of like diversifying your stocks and stuff
Yeah.
so that all your eggs aren't in one basket. So yeah, I don't know. I'm just still in disbelief that this is, like I said, that this is a thing and it's a real business, and there's a team behind it now, and we can like offer so much more capacity to our clients, and 4 heads are better than one. And it's just so cool. I just never in a million years thought it would.
So how does someone get into grant writing if they're interested in that?
Yeah.
Or what if they're like, I love Elaine, I want to go work with her and get all the grants for all the people?
Yes. Hit me up. Absolutely. Always down, and always down to have those conversations. I do have a lot of grant writers that will approach me for an informational interview and like, tell me about your story. And I'm always happy to have that conversation. I think it's super fun. If anything that I can do can help mitigate, if I made a misstep, like how can I help people avoid that sort of thing? But, there's a lot of courses out there. Usually those folks are naturally inclined and pretty good at writing just naturally, but they don't maybe understand how the structure is of a grant. But that program I was telling you about, Learn Grant Writing, they have a whole bunch of, modules for folks that have literally never written a grant. So like if they're wanting to be an in-house grant writer, they have a whole pathway you can do there. If you just want to understand how the whole process works, they have all this learning. I just came into it with already that experience, but I still did all those modules and was like, this is a great review. Like, I wish I would have had this, when I started out and was just doing it on my own. It would have been. It would have been. So a lot of courses like that. Yeah.
So like skill-wise, is someone more like they're copywriters, or is it like what type of skill would you say makes a good grant writer?
Yeah, definitely the attention to detail, because, especially if you are working with a federal program and you have an RFP that you're reviewing, those can be 50, 75 pages of like, what exactly are they wanting you to have in your application? So yeah, attention to detail is very important. And because my grant writers are really client leads as well, like they have to be people.
Got
like
it.
They have to be able to have really good.
You can't be like an introvert and being like, I'm gonna go get some.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And some people, that's what they do, and so other people run their business differently. But that's how mine has to work, because we are so client focused and client
People
forward.
oriented. Yeah.
So you do have a question on here.
Oh.
It's from Rain. She says, what has your greatest grant writing win been?
Ooh, that's
Not
a good
necessarily
question.
dollars, but surprising, impactful, or I don't even know what that says.
That's
Sorry.
such a good question.
I'm like, what does it say?
I was trying to read the last
Imperative.
word. Imperative.
Yes.
Oh, that's such a good
That's
question.
a good question. Good job, Rain.
Man. Yeah, because it really isn't always all about the money,
Yeah.
because we can have clients that have $100,000 annual budget and an $11 million annual budget, and
Yeah.
$50,000 to those are very different.
Yeah.
What was
I
my
guess what's the
favorite?
one that made you cry?
Oh, I've had a few.
I would cry over all of them.
I know, but there's always-
I would.
I know.
Brian would just come home. I'd be sobbing every time we got it. I'd be like, we got another one.
It is so awesome. It's the best feeling. There was one organization I work with, and it was they're based in California, but they were doing workforce development support for women in South Africa. So it was very just amazing, very grassroots. And she had struggled for a long time, and we were able to get $25,000. And it was like the biggest, most amazing thing. And I remember seeing that award come through because we'd asked for $5,000. It's very rare that you'll get more than what you asked for. And I was like, this must be a typo. This can't possibly be.
Like so they added a zero.
Exactly. Truly. And so I just remember seeing that. It came to me first, and I was like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to call her. And so I called her, and we talked, and she was bawling, and I was bawling. And it was just,
that's cool.
And they were an organization, Women Enabled Enterprises, and they're still around and doing great work. And they are really great about tracking all of their, the specific individuals that they've served and now what they're doing and how they're starting their own businesses in South Africa and all of that, because the wage gap and gender gap over there is just wild. And so it's been really cool to see how far that $25,000 was stretched. And that was a really fun one.
So was that a one-time, or have they come back?
That was a one-time.
Okay.
Yep.
But, it was a one-time that probably, technically that was a 5-year endowment.
Right.
Yeah.
Compared to what we asked for. Yeah, for sure.
That's awesome.
It was fun. That was a great question. Thank you. Love it.
She says that's amazing. So
Thank you.
I love this interaction that we're able to do on the lives.
Yeah.
Just saying.
So cool.
So what's, how do people support you? How do we support you?
Oh, you're very kind. Like I said, we are always interested in learning what folks are doing in terms of in the nonprofit space or the business space, or I'm always happy to have that conversation, whether it's me that's the perfect grant consultant for you, or if it's that I know somebody else that is. I'm always happy to make that introduction. So send me an email. I'm on Instagram. My Facebook actually does work, so you can find my Facebook also.
Unlike somebody else we know.
I know. I'm on LinkedIn. So any way, shape, or form, I love to make those connections. And it's just it's so good and important for me in this next venture, like, since I am trying to get away from my desk far more, like to be out in community. So like, don't be afraid to say hi. Let's go meet and have coffee and talk through, if you're a nonprofit or struggling, let's see what we can do and work together. But yeah.
because I'm sure there's a lot of talking before even the work begins.
So much talking.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
much time. So many words. Many words.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. It really is. It's that relationship, not just with the funders, of course, like my clients and I have to have a lot of trust between one another, and they have to know that I always have their best interest in mind. And then, I'm able to serve as their advocates when hopefully they're in the room with me when I'm talking to funders, but sometimes they just will call me and I'm like, oh, the client's not here, but I am your best representative. Here I am. So, yeah.
So when people want to sign on to work with you, what does that picture look like? Is it like a one-time? Is it a monthly? What?
There's a couple different ways. Most of our clients are on monthly retainers just because they, unless they have a very specific, we want this grant written. This is the only one that we need help with. I'm like, okay, we'll do that. But that's hard. Project-based a little bit harder because they're not always top of mind. So when we have clients on retainer, it's like, all right, every month, what's coming up? Yep, we are always searching. We're always continuously prospecting. We send out a monthly board report so they can see like what's been submitted, what's on the horizon, what's been awarded, what's been declined, what's going on. So there are a lot of different ways. So we do monthly retainers, or we do kind of project-based support, depending on what folks need.
So as the organization grows, then maybe the level of service goes up as far as what they need.
Yeah.
So, someone who's just starting, I've got this idea.
Right.
I'm going to meet you for coffee, and we're going to maybe brainstorm a little bit, see if it's viable as far as getting grant money, and then all the way up to, you've got a board of directors that you're dealing with.
Exactly. And there's other things, if folks aren't ready or don't have the budget to, be with us on a monthly retainer, like there's a lot of things that we can do for them to help them, get off on the right foot. We can build you like a general operating grant narrative. So you can then use that to apply for grants. So it's not us that are doing it, but it's you, but it's a very finely tuned tool that you can use. So you're never looking at a blank piece of paper. We can build you out a small baby grant calendar. Like, hey, there's a lot
baby grant calendar. I love that.
There's a lot of noise out there. Like, focus on these 5 funders.
Okay.
These 5 are going to get you to that next level. And these are the ones you really need to build relationships with. So it can be super overwhelming when you're just starting out and you're like, oh my gosh, it looks like there's money everywhere, but like, I don't know who to trust and I don't know what to do first. And we can help you navigate those waters as well.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, we appreciate you coming out and explaining this mysterious grant writing thing to us because we had no idea that
it's a
this
whole
was
world.
a thing.
Well, and I think one of the neatest things that we're finding as we're doing these episodes of meeting with people in the community, like as we're just talking about wine company Parawine, and all of a sudden you're like, oh yeah, I know Sam. He's great. It's like it's crazy how many people are intertwined with other people you just wouldn't like think of right out of the chute, and it's kind of a neat. It's like spider webbing.
Yeah.
It's very neat. Yeah.
It's a small town.
I know. I know.
So
You don't
cool.
think about it as like a small town, but it really is.
Uh-huh.
Especially when it's a lot of this is on social media.
For sure.
I've gone through and liked every single business I can find around here, like from restaurants to grant writing places.
Yeah.
So it's like, man, we're running out. We're running out of people. There's like I've liked about like 800 companies just in Salem area.
Unreal.
But yeah, it's as we kind of grew out, we're finding there's a lot of different things out there.
That you didn't even know was there.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You just had to look left.
That's
Just
right.
say a little plug there for you. So
Thank you.
Thank you for coming
Yeah.
on.
Of course. This is so much fun.
All right.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you for coming out.